But meanwhile, my mother had this situation where every day, as part of her job, she has to do the laundry, whatever else it is, and here's the people from the office next door going in and out, and everybody's flirting with the shiksa. She's just a maid over here. And my brother's a baby, this is December, January, so he's 4 months old, 5 months old, something like that, 6 months old. He's there in his shorts or diapers, and every time he cries, Hans or Johan, goes and picks us through the baby's and says, alley-oop, don't cry and all the rest of it. And my mother's always figuring, that's all we need, the diaper will fall off and it's all over. What are you supposed to say like this? Be careful with the diaper, What are you going to do? So you live, it sounds funny, I understand it's amusing, but you live you die 1,000 deaths every day. To make it even more interesting, these nuns, as I described to you until now, were very religious people, and I mean that in the best way possible. You see what I'm describing over here. Yeah. But if you are there, you want to share the good news. Right? You want to share the promises of Christianity for the best of motives. You understand? So nobody ever put pressure on anything, but on the other hand, it's always there. And, they say, have you ever noticed this passage in Isaiah? How do the Jews explain this? In a nice way? How do the Jews understand this verse in Jeremiah? And so forth. And was she a Mulumedes? Understand? My mother always told the story that many years later she ended up in Baltimore, obviously. And she lived with her brother, half brother with Judy here, her father. And they had at that time the TV show $64,000 Question. And they asked the question, who's the first person in the Bible referred to as a prophet? It's a question I'm not sure many here could answer. Some could. Who's the first person in the Tanakh called a Navi? The answer, so my mother says, Abraham. So her brother was a learned person. He said, yes, this is not for women and amateurs, stay out of this, So brains are thinking up here, what was Abraham? He said, well, how do you know it was Abraham? He says, listen, when you're in a monastery, there's a grand total of one book. It's not a big library to read. So you become familiar, This is the way, through one episode after another, she was compelled to make it through. And the only positive part to say is that we're talking about from the end of December, it wasn't that long. It was this January, February, March. By April, the Russians were already there. So she went through 3-4 months, but up to the last minute, she saw through the window the Germans, when they were retreating from the Russian army, they weren't captured by the Russians, they shot a bunch of civilians in the street and take their clothes so they can be dressed in different clothes. So they were out to kill the Jews to the last minute. You see? And when the Russian army came in and was fighting everywhere, and in the SS headquarters, he had the bombardments, all the rest of it, and they're all huddled in a room, putting pillows in between the windows to catch the bullets and all the rest of it, and then the room bursts open, and it's the Russian army. With the big thing, with the uniforms and the famous hats, and they all start crying, and my mother more than anyone else. And the Russian soldiers say, what are you crying for? Don't believe the German propaganda. We're not as bad as they say it. Why we go all over Europe, everybody's crying over here. And they say, you fool, they're crying because they're happy. Now they're liberated. And even though the war went on for another month, but, they made it. But then began, when the war was over, then began what my mother described as the hardest years of her life, which people forget, because often the Holocaust story is over with the end of the war, and it was not. You see? For the next 45 to 53, for the next 8 years, she went through, she said, terrible emotional times, because you come back and everybody's dead. That's a simple fact. And she had one sister that survived, and the sister went nuts as a result of the Auschwitz experience. And those she got depressed and all those sorts of things. She and her sister had been in line, and Mengele said this to one, this to the other. So what does that do to you? And how do you cope with the loneliness, with the fact that everybody's dead and not coming back? She had dreams, nightmares. She sees the husband in the dream, and in the dream she wants to go and kiss him, and then he turns into a skeleton. This is not unusual. And she wasn't even in the camps. You see? And there's nobody to talk to. Right? Because people just said, get on with your life, build something together. And what did she do?